The fifth set will be played on Whirlwind. Spawning up in the top left-hand position as the green Protoss, playing for KT Rollster. His name is Stats. Currently has 1 kill.
And spawning in the bottom left position as a red Terran, playing for SK Telecom T1. His name is Fantasy.
Fantasy looking a little bit more focused and cool and in control than...
Stats was having a deep breeze. Was taking a deep breather, and actually what's funny is that, you know, we have the Korean audio in our ears just to see once, you know, sometimes when there's a technical difficulties, yeah, we pick up on the cues. Sometimes we know what the technical problems are. And the Korean caster was sighing at the same time Stats was. It was like 100% sync between the player and the commentator.
It's like he knew, man. It's like
he knew it. He knew it.
It's a mind reader, man. Mind reader. So, you know, this is a map that the drops are really effective on, I feel, from a Terran point of view on a Protoss player. Chances of raining Hellbats.
Not too sure about particular Hellbats. I mean, I know there's going to be tons of drops in this game. Hellbats around 70%, I would say.
So we have a Supernova Maniac weather forecast, 70% chance of raining Hellbats.
Well, it's like 100% chance of raining outside today.
Yeah, it has been raining like all day in Korea.
At least I got one correct.
I actually had to use an umbrella, man. A little bit embarrassed to say that as a Floridian, but I mean,
I get what you're saying.
I
get where you're coming from.
I was wearing my leather jacket, so I had to keep it nice and dry.
Yeah, it actually hasn't rained that much in Korea. I mean, yes, the rain season is coming soon in Korea, where it's going to rain a lot more than this in the middle of July. But I'm just surprised that it started raining a lot today. But it did help cool off. So,
well, like I was okay with the heat, but I guess it wasn't too bad.
For people who aren't used to the heat.
No. Basically, it was just cold enough so I could wear a jacket outside as opposed to just having to wear a t-shirt.
No, I could have dealt with a t-shirt actually, because I just didn't like I just don't like the hot atmosphere sometimes that you have in Korea, especially like really sticky.
Well, that's Florida, man.
Yeah.
So it's like for me, it's like just walk in the park, quite literally.
Actually, Whiplash, he was saying how it's gonna be all fine when it comes to summer, and he's handling it really well. Back in winter, he was freezing.
Oh, I can't handle the I can handle the heat, but I can't handle the chilling cold.
Well, Fantasy now going for the double Reaper. We don't see this often from a Protoss, Terran player.
No, this is actually quite rare. We do have the Mothership Core on the way here. Fantasy following this up with a command center as well. And, you know, he is scouting with his SCV, so he will be able to figure out where his opponent is in due time here. We're only going to have a Mothership Core out, it looks like, for stats here, so we're going to have to see how much damage the double Reapers can do here.
So eventually he's going to defend against the Reapers, but how much damage can Fantasy do before that end?
Oh, sending a Reaper out. Looks like he wants to try to kill off the scouting worker, I guess, at this point, which is actually really smart, but there's no scouting worker coming from Stats, so this actually isn't going to work.
Yeah, this is... didn't we see this build from Byung last week?
I think we did, yeah. He went for the double Reaper.
He went for the double Reaper, and then he gets tons of Marines out, and then starts pressuring his opponent constantly.
Yeah. Some good Reaper micro here from Fantasy. He's going to have to eventually back out here. Imagine if he had his two Reapers together, how different things would have been.
Well, he is getting the Marines out, and that's going to pressure his opponent a little bit more. The Mothership Core, where was that? I think it was on the right top corner of the map, which means that there's only one sentry against the Reaper.
All right, the sentry looks like that's only delaying time. Fantasy needs to micro this properly in order to kill off the sentry. It's so close to dying here. Fantasy, he manages. Oh, no, not yet. Okay, there we go. Sentry down. We have a second one on the way that could end up dying as well. Fantasy will take a nice lead here if he can kill that off, but it looks like it will be forced to run away. The Reaper can regenerate itself, though, but no! Mothership Core takes it out.
That was a little miss micro at the end. He could have saved double Reapers instead of trying to risk too much at the end. Like, he could have saved it, but he just tried to go for it, and it just didn't work out. But behind this, a lot of Marines coming out. Still, Widow Mine also being built.
Yeah, Fantasy continuing with the aggression here. I have to say that the Reapers was still pretty much worth it because they did force a lot of probes to go off the mineral line, and they did kill off one of the sentries. But the problem here, the Mothership Core, the Nexus Cannon. It's going to make attacking the front very hard. So Fantasy, what he has to do is kind of fake out his opponent, force the Mothership Core cannon to go down on one base. So the other Marines moving in here, and it looks like Stats caught completely off guard here.
The cannon's going to go down, which means that no more cannon inside the main base. The medevac just finished, and it should be moving around the map pretty soon.
All right. So this means that the Widow Mines... Oh, but the Observer does scout this, so it looks like Stats will be able to defend in his main base. He does have a few Stalkers sitting there waiting. Ooh, and a cannon as well in the main mineral line.
That's a really nice decision. I was getting scared that Stats didn't have a second Observer inside the main base for detection, but using the cannon against the Hellbats, and also it's going to work against the Widow Mines.
Yeah, so Stats doing a really good job at defending against the aggression from Fantasy here. The Widow Mine looks like it may get picked off here. Yep.
The Observer was in position. Yeah.
So, and wow, this, okay. That medevac will barely escape here. Sending down that Widow Mine, and even the Widow Mine's going to get 0 kills here. Wow. Stats actually doing an amazing job defending against this. He was able to completely identify what his opponent was planning. As far as the follow-up goes, we have the Hellbats on the way now from Fantasy, but the problem is we already have photon cannons in the mineral lines. We have the Robo. We have the Stalkers. I mean, Fantasy, he is behind kind of in every way right now, I want to say.
So what Fantasy wants to do right now is to keep constant pressure. Yes, he is going to lose a few units because of the cannons at the main base and the natural, but he's just trying to buy enough time to get a third base up.
Yeah, he is building that third base in his main.
But look at this.
Ooh. Double Forge adding on 4 more gateways here. Yeah, you know what? I could see a 2-base timing working out very well here from Stats' side, because Fantasy, he's playing greedy. He's doing a lot of drops that aren't really doing any damage. He is not investing into his tech as much. Only now his stim is halfway down. He's just starting his +1 attack, and we already have the +2 armor on the way for Stats here, and he is getting this +1 as well behind this.
He learned from the mistakes from Hero and Oz. He should just say once he knows that Fantasy doesn't have that much armor, he should just say screw it and go for the attack. But Fantasy does scout the number of gateways, but he didn't drop.
Ooh, bit of a mistake there from Fantasy, and the Hellbat's doing some damage here, but they aren't actually going to kill off any units. Medevac goes down as well. Fantasy is starting to fumble a lot here. Oh, but the probes, they're getting very stacked up. And at the same time, there was an attack at the natural, I believe.
Yeah, there was a drop at the natural and the main at the same time. Up to 9 probes have been killed. So like I said, once it drops, it does get some kills. How many kills, we don't know. Depends on the Protoss player's micro and split with the probes.
Fantasy is ahead in supply here still, though. So at least he's got that to his credit. And finishing up this third command center here, morphing that into an orbital. We have Charge on the way as well. More gateways being added on, and Templar Archives as well from Stats here. And from Fantasy side, he's continuing that Hellbat production, so I'm not a huge fan of what Stats plans on doing here, because it's going to be a very Zealot-centric army, not focusing on the Stalkers and the Colossi.
Yeah, and, you know, if Fantasy just masses up the Hellbats and uses them in the main army later on instead of just sacrificing them for harassment, then Stats is going to get caught completely off guard if he decides to go for a push.
Stats also looking like he wants to take a third base. Fantasy moving across the map with a small force here. Still ahead in supply, though, 83 to 114, so Fantasy's got to be feeling happy about that. And we do have some Immortal production on the way from Stats. He's going to get the Immortals and the High Templar. Scan reveals everything, though. The High Templar, the Immortals, the unit composition. Surprisingly small armies for each player, you know, based on the amount of time that's been that's already elapsed in this game.
What I'm more interested in is Stats going to go for a timing attack, or is he just getting all these army out for defense? I don't think it's going to be defense. At this point, he does have the pilots around the map to scout where his opponent is. But also, the charge just finished up. He's not going for the storm right now. He doesn't have any Robobay. He's sitting up to 8 gateways on 2 bases.
Interesting. Fantasy, he's getting the +1 armor for his mech units. Combat shield about to complete here. We have +2 attack and +1 armor on the way for him as well. He's getting a Ghost Academy. I think he may be going for the build that Flash is going for, but we have a drop in the main base here. The Hellbat needs to be focusing on the Zealots there, but it's not. And it looks like Medevac will escape with a few units there.
Was trying to get the Hellbat, but there was a Marine in there, so he couldn't pick up the Hellbat at the last second. However, Stats has up to 3 Immortals, 1 Archon, and he is slowly pushing down on the map. He is mass chrono boosting all those gateways and warping in a lot of units at the mid 6 o'clock position.
Looks like it's going to be a 2-base all-in from Stats here.
The units are trapped out.
Fantasy, he needs to identify what's coming his way.
He sees it. He sees the Archon getting morphed in right there. He is going to kill the Archon. He knows where the pylon is, but he needs to make sure those units do not get picked up.
Sick moves by Fantasy. He goes ahead, snipes off that pylon, then boosts out of there with his army. And he also kills off an Archon. So, you know, things looking pretty good for Fantasy. He has to defend against this main attack here, and he will become victorious, but it's going to be very close here. We have a lot of upgrades about to complete for the Terran player, and nice force fields going down, trying to segment off this army. Time Warp going down as well. Will it be enough, though, from our Protoss player? The Terran army is falling in supply, but still ahead of the Protoss player. And with the reinforcements coming from the Terran side, using that bunker as well.
Well, the Immortals are still alive and well, so Sassy needs to bust it right away, but he's going for the 3rd base, which doesn't really matter. He should have gone for the natural right away.
So it looks like, though, the supply is starting to even up here. The medevacs need to pick up the SCVs, move them back to the natural. Fantasy now stuck on 2 bases. He has to try to hold this. It's going to be very hard. There's Immortals and Archons in this army mix. Good upgrades as well behind this. That bunker is going to be killed off almost immediately. SCV is going off the mineral line as well to help defend here, but there are charge lot reinforcements. He needs to take out the Archons and then the Immortals if he wants to defend against here. It's still very close. The SCVs.
The whole position on the SCVs preventing the cells from getting a really smart move by Fantasy, trying to buy as much time. But Stats just has too much.
It's not enough. Stats has too much here, and Fantasy, I think he's going to have to GG here. He just doesn't have the army to deal with what Stats has here. So a really cool 2-base all-in from Stats. He made it look like he was going for High Templar. He just went for the Archons and the Immortals. Moved in for the big kill, and that's going to be it. Fantasy, he has got no choice but to leave now.
Yeah, this is going to be it. This is Fantasy GG timing, the classic one.
The classic Fantasy GG timing. He does not want to give up. But it is over. There's no way he can come back from this game at this point. GG is called. Fantasy falls. The Stats on Whirlwind, giving Protoss their first victory on this map.
Fantasy did see it coming, but he was kind of hesitating on how to engage the army, and he was caught in the middle with the force fields going down. The Zealots were getting free shot on the Hellbats, and it seemed like Fantasy was doing well little by little, but the Immortals from the back were taking out everything.
Another thing to point out is that Fantasy's upgrades were just shy of finishing when Stats moved into the attack. So we have to go into